Awkward here, back with another video. Ooh, nah, this camera is fire. I got a new camera recently. I don't know if y'all noticed, but this camera, I ain't gonna lie, I just noticed it. This camera hidden. What's going on, guys? Awkward here, back with another video. Here today to give you my review of this new Westside Gunn record, "Pray." And then you pray for me. So, Westside Gunn, Buffalo's own leader of Griselda, just had a killer feature on Travis Scott's Utopia, and all eyes were kind of on Westside Gunn to properly, sort of cash in on the hype. Griselda been a group that seemingly has really taken over in the past 4 to 5 years as the next big New York crew, and but has struggled to sort of establish some mainstream appeal. But with the help of features such as Johnny P's Caddy and now Lost Forever, we are really seeing Griselda at least get a lot of respect within the sphere of at least mainstream rappers. Maybe not the mainstream rap space overall, but all eyes were on Westside Gunn to deliver and give an album that potentially these new fans might want, but really just perform at the highest level. And we got Pray For Me, which is a follow-up to Pray For Paris. On Instagram, we got tons of snippets, a documentary, which I still haven't watched yet. Let me know if y'all want me to watch that documentary, actually. I'd be down to watch it. And, Westside Gunn is known for curating some of the highest peak level albums of all time. Pray For Paris, honestly, one of the best albums of all time, period. You know what I mean? I think give it some more time, and I really do believe that it will be, amongst the top 20 of New York albums of all time. So there was a lot of hype going into And Then You Pray For Me. The feature list was pretty exciting, but also a bit of a head scratcher, as there was a lot of artists who Westside Gunn was not, ever really familiar with working with before. And so we were all curious about the sonic direction of this album. And I've got to say, I kind of still am. So I'm overall pretty disappointed in this record. It's not quite for the reason that you think, but I want to be very clear, just in case Westside Gunn sees this or any of his fans see this. I want to make it very clear that, first off, I'm a new fan of Griselda, got into their music in 2021, and I am neither a fan who got introduced to him this year with Lost Forever. I very much understand where Griselda comes from and what their traditional sound is, and understand where they strive. However, I'm also not a super old fan, as I've been somebody who's been wanting them to break into the mold and become more accessible for years at this point. And so I want to make it clear that I'm not here to crap on stylistic jumps, nor am I here to crap on them trying to make an appeal to the mainstream. However, I just don't think Westside Gunn did all that good of a job at it. And we'll get into why, in a bit, but I think, as you sort of will see, the main issues I have is I think that this album doesn't quite know what it wants to be, and I don't feel like if Westside Gunn was going to make a sonic jump, he doesn't fully commit to it. But let's get into it, because there's also some positives about this record. First off, getting into the writing, this was great for me, honestly. I didn't have any issues with the writing. Westside Gunn is giving us these off-the-wall bars here and there, but we do have some lyrical highlights, such as 1989 and Kitchen Lights. Overall, you can find a pretty plentiful amount of lyrically focused off-the-wall bars that we can expect from Westside Gunn. And even though compared to his contemporaries, he's not the best rapper, specifically, compared to Conway and Benny, I think by himself, Westside Gunn still has great punchlines, still has great punchlines, and still does a great job on the writing front. Next, let's talk about flow. And I don't want to spend too much on this, too long on this, but I gotta be honest. This was the worst part of the record, and honestly, this was bad. This was very bad. Westside Gunn felt like he was rapping off beat for the entire record. Even songs that ended up being pretty good, such as I believe the song was called Kuda with the big three, Gunn, Benny, and Conway. Even that performance was underwhelming. The only songs where he really showed his stuff was on songs that he felt comfortable on, such as the second track as well as Kitchen Lights, and songs of that ilk that he's already done before. But most of the new stuff, the trap stuff, he not only was rapping off beat, but also sounded very uncomfortable, sounded very unsure of himself, honestly. Didn't sound like he quite knew where to go, and sounded like he was still figuring out the sound. And this is generally my biggest problem with this record, especially when we talk about Westside Gunn's performance, is that I understand that you're making a sonic leap, but I think it's important to fully master whatever you're doing before you just go and make that leap. One of the things that made, say, A Late Night with Silk Sonic so good is that they found a way vocally to mesh very well with this very soulful production. And I don't feel like the time was really spent to master flowing on these trap beats. And so you have these old school Griselda flows on these trap beats, and it just sounds off. Generally, faster flows are better on, and triplet flows are better on these trap beats, and he doesn't do that either. It's interesting to feel like, for example, somebody like Nas, who did a great job, adopting new flows and changing himself aesthetically to match these new beats. I don't feel like Westside Gunn did that whatsoever on this album. And so overall, the flows are pretty bad. And honestly, while the writing, like I said earlier, is great, I think the flows, for me at least, really take me out of the listening experience when it comes to Westside Gunn's performances, honestly. Then we get into the features, and this is where I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give it a mid. You know what I mean? I'm going to give it a mid, and I'm going to explain why. I was very close to giving it a good, but I'm going to explain why I'm going to give it a mid, unfortunately. So there was a lot of different features on here. Some that that made sense, some that didn't make as much sense, but going into the album. But once you hear the album, you very much understand why people like Jeezy, Rick Ross, and ESTG are on this record, because he's trying a new sound and he wants to fully commit to that sound, which I think is great. I think that most artists who make a stylistic jump should go out of their way to seek people in that art style. You saw that with Lil Yachty on the psychedelic rock album Let's Start Here. With that being said, there's two main problems I have with the features. Number one, you have people like ESTG who do a decent job but are trying to follow Westside Gunn's flow, and so they don't really do what they're supposed to do on the record because they're trying to have chemistry with Westside Gunn. As well as you have this awful appearance by Trapaholics and EST Nick. That song JD Wrist might be the worst Griselda song I have ever heard in my entire life. While it is very funny and I can appreciate the comedic value, it is still pretty bad, honestly. And so you have features like that, and then even the sort of good features, like a Stove God, like a Jid, which was an absolute highlight on the record, killed his feature, but it was safe. It was a feature for a song that we knew that was safe for Westside Gunn. And this is another thing I feel with this record, is that he didn't fully commit to this trap sound. You know what I mean? If you're gonna do this trap sound, you can't go and say, oh, but let me play it safe and still give my audience what I want. It feels like, if you're gonna do it, you should do it full send and not also give us these songs that don't really fit within the aesthetic flow of the project. because it makes your project feel like it lacks direction. And so while I do like features like JID and features like Stove God Cooks on Kitchen Lights, which Kitchen Lights is probably the best song on this project and probably a top 5 Stove song, honestly. Um, they were sort of spoiled to me a little bit by the fact that these songs are Westside Gunn playing it safe for the audience he already has and not fully committing to the trap sound. And so what we're left with is a handful of solid features, the highlights being things such as Jeezy and Rick Ross, who were fully able to embellish on their own flows and their own sounds to bring life to those beats. But that's really it. Just maybe 4 or 5 features. Casey as well was pretty solid, where they go and just do normal things that they would do on these beats. And yeah, but most of the other features either didn't fit the aesthetic of the album, or at least the aesthetic that I believe that it was trying to fit, or they just were not all that good and trying to follow Westside Gunn's crappy flow, as we mentioned earlier. So, musical execution, I'm going to go ahead and give this a mid. And the reason for that is because there were a decent amount of pretty bad sounding tracks, but there was also a solid mix of songs that Westside Gunn has done before and song ideas that Westside Gunn is a lot more comfortable with that, still elevate the project. That being said, I still give it an overall mid because it felt like this project was going in a sort of more modern trap direction. And the highlights for me are, kind of like Jimmy Cooks on Honestly Nevermind, if you will. They're songs that serve the fans but don't really do justice to the sound that's being attempted here. Some of the highlights for me were definitely Kitchen Lights, Fly God 2X, Mama's Prime Time with JID, of course. But most of the trap stuff was pretty mediocre, whether it be, stuff where Westside Gunn was by himself, such as LL Bull Gun, or when Westside Gunn would enlist mediocre features such as Steve and Johnny with ESTG. Overall, most of the trap beats didn't really work all that well, and going back to the flows really took me out of the listening experience almost entirely. And then you have the truly terrible songs on here, such as Chloe and JD Wrist, which, one of them, just the fact, just Trapaholics and the beat and everybody being offbeat, as well as EST Knack, just destroyed that song. And then, of course, we know that Westside Gunn should never be allowed to make any love songs ever. And despite all the help in the world from a Ty Dolla $ign, it still didn't hit. It's still just bad. And also the reason why I give it a mid is because, like I said earlier, the direction of the album is just very confusing. I don't understand what he was really going for. I saw in an Instagram post that, to a certain extent, this was maybe geared towards the new fans he had acquired from the Westside, from the Lost Forever collaboration. And I kind of get that, although his part of Lost Forever was produced by The Alchemist anyway, so I don't even really, to me, that doesn't really track. He also mentioned that it was just sort of his creative being, and I understand, I want to be clear, I understand, feeling like you want to break out of a certain sound. I just don't think he did it all that well in this in this effort, you know what I'm saying, with this project. So yeah, the musical execution, honestly, overall is mid. Especially because even the songs that are highlights, they're songs of stuff he's already done before. I will say though, even though he himself was pretty underwhelming, the song Kudas was definitely a lyrical and a sonic highlight on the project. And generally the features who cooked made those songs, such as Dunhill. So yeah. Overall, it was a mixed bag, but overall, the musical execution was pretty underwhelming. Finally, let's talk about the production, and this is where like it bothers me the most because the production is honestly great. DJ Drama was honestly like a great addition to the soundscape, especially as as Westside Gunn introduced more bolstering sounds into the mix. Most of the trap beats besides the Trapaholics one were honestly pretty awesome. And the Griselda, the Conductor beats always slap. Conductor does not miss, absolutely. However, one of the things like with the production is like I really do feel like this had to be the largest collection of wasted beats I have ever heard in my life because for all the great production, for all the great trap production that was happening on this, I think Murder on the Beats was on one of them. Take Keith, I heard a couple of times as well. No one capitalized on it. I don't feel like it was properly capitalized on. And so despite the production being great, the performances and the overall disorganized soundscape sort of spoil that, unfortunately. And overall, I'm going to give this project a mid. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's bad because there's still a decent amount of quality on here, but the confusing direction of the project on top of the pretty terrible Westside Gunn performances from a flow perspective, as well as the fact that I don't think that Westside Gunn has really found his groove with this production style, really brings this project down and easily makes it pretty much the most disappointing record of the year for me. Let me know what y'all thought of this record, down below. As always, I'm open to changing my opinion, and I'm curious to hear what y'all think. I haven't like watched any reviews of anything, so I have no idea what anybody else thinks. I think I saw one like take. I think somebody on Joe Budden podcast likes it, but I haven't watched any takes. So yeah, let me know what y'all think. Down in the comment section below. With that being said, peace, y'all.